It happened at 3:07 a.m. The glass towers of downtown Manhattan stood in eerie silence, their mirrored faces catching only fragments of streetlight. Inside the 32nd floor of Voxera's headquarters, the silence was broken not by voices, but by the frantic clicking of keyboards and the shrill alarms of a system on fire. Server 2 just dropped, a young engineer shouted. His voice cracked as he scanned cascading red alerts. Another screen flashed warnings: critical error, system compromised, AI modules offline. This wasn't a minor glitch. This was the nightmare no tech company could afford. Their crown jewel, an artificial intelligence system called EchoMind, was supposed to launch to the world in less than 12 hours. Investors were flying in. Journalists had their headlines ready. Millions of dollars and reputations balanced on a single platform. And now it was crashing before it had even begun. At the center of it all stood Ava Sterling. She didn't say a word. She never did in moments like these. Her dark hair, tied in a low knot, shimmered faintly under the fluorescent lights. She moved between the desks like a shadow scanning the chaos. Engineers were swearing under their breath, managers fumbling for answers, but Ava remained utterly silent, her eyes sharp, her jaw tight. Silence had become her armor. The board called it an eccentric leadership style. They said she led with presence, not with words. But those who looked closely enough knew the truth. Ava Sterling, CEO of Voxera, hadn't spoken in years. She leaned over one programmer's shoulder, fingers darting across the keyboard, her notes quick and precise. But the lines of code unraveled faster than she could piece them back together. A tidal wave of corrupted data logs, overwritten back-end modules folding in on themselves. "It's gone," whispered the head of IT, his face pale. "We'll have to pull the launch." For the first time that night, the engineers looked up at her, waiting for orders. But Ava didn't speak. She only scribbled 3 words on a legal pad and held it up. "Keep searching. Now." They obeyed, though every second felt like dragging sand against glass. Within an hour, the team had burned out. By 4:30, one by one, they packed up their laptops and left with slumped shoulders, muttering apologies that sounded more like surrender. The office emptied until only Ava remained. She stood by the massive glass wall overlooking the city. Her reflection stared back at her, tired and brittle. She pressed her palms against the cold glass, fighting the tremor in her chest. For the first time in years, her silence betrayed her. Tears welled, and she sank into her chair, staring at the screen's relentless red warnings. Everything I built, everything I believed in, falling apart. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. Just the heavy weight of a secret she carried alone. And that's when she heard it, soft, steady, almost unnoticed at first. The squeak of a mop bucket's wheels. From the hallway beyond the glass doors, a figure in navy overalls moved with practiced ease. His head was slightly bowed, his dark hair streaked with early gray. A janitor. He pushed the bucket in rhythm, humming faintly to himself, a tune so ordinary it somehow cut through the tension like fresh air. Daniel Brooks. He was the kind of man nobody noticed during the day. To executives, he was invisible, a pair of hands that kept the building spotless. To late-night workers, he was a quiet presence, emptying trash cans and wiping fingerprints from screens. But he noticed everything. Always had. As he stepped into the office, he froze. There, under the harsh glow of failing monitors, sat the CEO of Voxera. Ava Sterling herself, eyes rimmed with red hands clutching a crumpled note she hadn't dared give away. Daniel hesitated. He knew better than to intrude on executive business. Yet something about the way she sat so small inside a corner office that usually radiated power pulled him closer. Ava caught his gaze. For a split second, pride and vulnerability wrestled in her eyes. She dropped her glance, shoving the note into her pocket. But Daniel had already seen enough, the weight on her shoulders, the storm she carried alone. He wanted to say something. "Are you okay?" Or, "Rough night." But Daniel wasn't the type to pry. Instead, he did something so simple, so ordinary, it startled her. He reached into his cart, pulled out a small folded napkin, and placed it gently on the edge of her desk. No words. Just a quiet gesture that said, "I see you. You don't have to hide." Ava stared at it. Her throat tightened, and before she knew it, her tears spilled freely. She pressed the napkin to her eyes, clutching it as if it were the last piece of kindness left in the building. Daniel nodded once, no judgment, no expectation, just presence. Then he turned back toward his cart as if to leave her alone with her storm. But behind him, Ava's hand trembled. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the crumpled note. Her handwriting, slanted uneven, bled across the page. "Help me." She froze. Her pride screamed at her to tear it up, to stay silent as she always had. But her soul longed for someone who could hear her without needing her voice. With shaking hands, she balled the note tighter, unable to give it away. Not yet. Daniel, sensing her hesitation though he hadn't seen the words, paused at the doorway. He turned slightly, his eyes catching hers one last time. In that glance there was something Ava hadn't felt in years: recognition. Not of her title, not of her power, but of her humanity. And for the first time since the servers had crashed, for the first time in what felt like forever, Ava let herself believe just a little that maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. The city outside began to wake, the first blush of dawn breaking across the skyline. But inside that office, in the silence between a CEO who could not speak and a janitor who chose not to, a bridge had begun to form. Fragile, invisible, but strong enough to hold the weight of two lives about to collide. The crash had happened. The storm was far from over. But in that sliver of morning light something new stirred. Hope. By morning, the city had traded its hush for horns and heat. The sun pushed through a gauze of cloud, turning Voxera's mirrored facade into a blade of light. Inside, coffee-steamed shoulders drooped, and the kind of tired that lives behind the eyes settled over everyone who'd survived the night. Daniel Brooks wheeled his cart down the 32nd floor corridor at 7:12 a.m., the hour when executives started arriving and the office tried to pretend nothing had burned. He wasn't pretending. He'd mopped up panics before: late rent, late notices, late apologies. Panic had a smell. So did cover-ups. He stopped by the communal kiosk across from the operations war room. It was a simple station used by facilities and delivery crews to log requests, print visitor passes, check building notices. He tapped in his employee ID to file a maintenance ticket about a flickering light. Habit made his eyes drift just for a second to the left side of the screen where the building intranet listed public shares, mailroom events, recycled trash. Trash. Not a real deletion, just a holding place with read-only access used by every department to park non-sensitive junk until IT's weekly purge. The folder's newest entry blinked at him like a heartbeat. EchoMind Prod 05 log, time-stamped 3:08 a.m. He didn't break in. He didn't guess passwords or cross any lines. He just did what the system allowed any badge to do. He clicked. The file bloomed across the screen, a wall of time-stamped whispers. Daniel's shoulders eased into an old posture he hadn't needed in years, the lean-in of a mind tracing patterns. Server handshakes. Module pings. A heartbeat, then a dragged-out silence where there should have been noise. He scrolled slower. There. A gap too clean to be random. A log that should have screamed and instead hummed. Whole minutes with info when alert should have been singing. Someone had turned down the volume on the fire. He exhaled through his nose, steady, remembering another life: conference rooms with bad air whiteboards scarred by decisions, the bitter taste of being right too early. Bugs don't hide themselves, he murmured. People do. He didn't touch a single line in Voxera's systems. He wasn't that man anymore. But right beside the kiosk sat a shared workstation for the ops team. Left unlocked its screen a mosaic of terminal windows, a text editor open to a copy of anonymized diagnostics. A sticky note on the bezel read, "Use this machine for triage. Nothing here is live." Daniel stood there a long beat, listening to his own better angels. Then he leaned forward, opened a new text document, and pasted 3 log excerpts. Not to fix, not to meddle, to show a pattern anyone could see if they wanted to. His fingers hovered, then typed a single line at the top the way an old habit would start a notebook before the math got messy. Yeah, not a software bug. A trust bug. He didn't sign it. He didn't even save it. He just left the window open like you'd set down a glass of water for someone who didn't know they were thirsty yet. The war room door hissed open. Ava Sterling stepped out with the careful grace of someone who'd been awake too long. She wore last night's jacket like armor and carried a schoolteacher's clipboard cupped against her ribs. The hallway conversations died to a respectful hush without anyone meaning to. She was that kind of gravity silent, but strong enough to bend the room. Daniel moved back to his cart hand on the handle, ready to make himself smaller, but Ava's gaze caught the glow of the triage screen. She drifted toward it. The cursor blinked over his single line like a pulse. Her eyes flicked from the comment to the pasted logs, then to the kiosk screen still open on trash, then to him. There were 1,000 ways that look could have landed accusation, caution dismissal. Instead, what flashed and settled was stranger. Recognition. Like seeing a word you hadn't realized you knew how to read. She set her clipboard down and picked up a dry erase marker from the rail beneath the glass wall. Her hand trembled faint, but there. She wrote careful block letters beneath his line. "Show me where trust broke." Daniel swallowed. He had boundaries he kept like promises to himself, to his daughter, to whatever clean life he'd managed to rebuild. He wouldn't cross locked doors or hack anything that didn't invite him. But this, an unlocked console with a non-live copy. A CEO who asked without speaking. He stepped closer, respectful of space. He pointed, not touching the keyboard, to a section of logs that looked harmless. Routine sync. Routine checksum. Routine. Silence. "Right there," he said softly, voice low enough that it barely rippled the air between them. "Your system reports a success, but you never see the noisy steps that prove it. It's too tidy." Her pen hovered. "Too tidy is not honest." She underlined it once. He nodded. "Someone cleaned the log harder than I clean floors." That pulled the ghost of a smile to the corner of her mouth. It was quick then gone, but it humanized the moment. Behind her, 2 engineers slowed, then pretended to tie shoes, watching without watching. She wrote again, "Use motive." Then smaller, as if answering herself. Who Daniel turned palms flat against the edge of the desk, thinking. He wouldn't accuse. He didn't have to. Patterns accuse themselves. "You have a back door," he said words even. Not the kind that opens a door. The kind that dims a hallway so nobody sees who walked through. She looked up, and for the first time that morning her eyes shone with something other than loss. A kind of fierce clarity. "Can you help me?" she wrote. The marker squeaked. The hallway's AC hummed. Time thinned. He could say no. He should say no. It wasn't his job, and it wasn't his fight, and he had a little girl who liked her peanut butter cut into triangles, not squares, and a life that worked like a chair with 3 good legs. But the 4th leg, the one called purpose, had been missing for years. You learn to live close to the floor. You forget how high you once sat. He didn't answer right away. He looked at the glass wall and saw a younger man reflected there, one with conference badges and too much faith in the places where decisions were made. He felt the old scar throb, the one you can't photograph, the one inside your name. Finally, he nodded once. "I won't touch what isn't mine," he said, steady now. "But I can show you where someone else did." Ava's relief came like a tide going out. Her shoulders lowered. She capped the marker and stepped back, letting him stand where the light fell best on the screen. A junior engineer, braver than most, edged closer. "Ma'am, is this okay?" He darted a glance at Daniel's uniform like it was a mismatch in an equation. Ava didn't turn. She pressed her finger to the glass beside Daniel's line and tapped twice her version of a gavel. The engineer didn't need more. He nodded, swallowed his bias, and melted back into the war room. Daniel gestured to the kiosk. "You'll want to ask why a production log took a detour through trash. That usually happens when someone wants a clean table before dinner guests arrive." Her pen moved again, this time on the paper she kept clipped to the board. Ask who manages exports, who schedules purges, who names files. Then, on the glass, a quieter addendum, almost a promise to herself. Truth leaves fingerprints. He smiled without thinking. So do lies, he said. They're just wearing gloves. Ava looked at him then, like the sun had tilted and found a new angle on the room. It wasn't worship, and it wasn't shock. It was gratitude in its purest form. I see what you are, and it matters. He circled another section with the mouse. This part, see how the authentication token cycles one beat earlier than the log claims. That's not a race condition. That's someone trimming the story to fit a shape. She wrote smaller now near the edge of the glass. Someone wrote a lie and called it maintenance. He let the silence hold, not filling it with his own history. There would be time, or there wouldn't. He pointed to the clock on the wall. You've got, 9 hours until the press want a miracle. The number didn't need correcting. She nodded. He lifted his eyes to hers. Miracles are just problems that met the right people in the right order. That one landed deep. You could see it. A tiny sound escaped her, more breath than voice, but it carried a word he hadn't expected to hear from her this soon. Please. It was nearly a whisper, raw and brief, as if borrowed from a time before silence had become her wound. He didn't react, didn't make the moment bigger with surprise. He simply accepted the gift of it and folded it carefully into his yes. Okay, he said. Let's start simple. Lock the room to essential staff. Pull a clean copy of last week's logs. If we compare honest noise to last night's neatness, the lies will glow. Ava snapped into motion 2 taps on her tablet, a gesture to security, a nod that sent the right people moving. Doors slid shut. Footsteps reset. The war room became a chapel. Daniel rolled his cart to the corner out of the way and pulled out nothing more dangerous than a notebook and a pencil he'd sharpened down to a stubborn nub. He sketched a flow of boxes and arrows as if he were drawing a map to a place only he remembered. He labeled one box noise we expect, another silence we didn't earn. He could feel her watching, not hovering, just present, the kind of presence you give to someone when you're asking them to hold a piece of your heart and not drop it. Why are you helping me? She wrote on the board. He looked at the question for a long second. He could have said money, or curiosity, or boredom. He chose the truth, because someone once told me my job was to keep floors clean. Turns out I like clean stories better. Her eyes softened. She uncapped the marker one more time and beneath everything else wrote a single word that anchored the room. Trust. He nodded. We'll earn it back, line by line. Outside the glass, the day grew louder. Inside, the world drew down to text and timing and 2 people who didn't need many words to build a bridge. He traced one last arrow, tapped the page with the eraser, and said what would become the sentence that carried them through the fire. The code will tell us what happened if we let it speak. Ava lifted the marker as if lifting a vow. Then we listen. Night came like a curtain that wouldn't quite close. The city hummed its restless lullaby. The 32nd floor refused to sleep. On the glass wall of the war room, yesterday's notes still clung like fingerprints. Trust. Too tidy is not honest. Then we listen. They listened. Ava keyed in with security at 11:47 p.m. Hair pulled back, sleeves rolled. Daniel was already there, cart parked neatly in the corner as if the mop and bucket were part of the team. No one else. No witnesses. No noise that wasn't invited. She slid a fresh stack of printouts onto the table, sanitized logs from the last honest week and a forensic copy of last night's collapse. She wrote on the glass, "Ew, compare, noise." Daniel nodded, the kind of nod that says, "We know the road now." He sharpened his pencil's small ritual steady hands and drew 2 timelines on his notebook, little beats and bars like a piece of sheet music. Software has a rhythm when it's telling the truth, he said. Connect, verify, complain a little, settle down. Honest systems complain. Liars purr. Ava's mouth twitched. The tiniest smile. She circled a block of timestamps in the Honest Week column and wrote "Issues, complaints." Good. He breathed easier. They started simple. He traced authentication calls in last week's logs, 3 handshakes, 2 challenge responses, 1 checksum, nag. Then they studied the same window on the night of the crash. See, Daniel tapped pencil, gentle on the page. Handshake, handshake, skip. The system claims a 3rd handshake that leaves no footprints. That's a told you so without a show me how. Ava wrote, "Someone told our story for us." Then, smaller, almost like a confession. I wrote, "Pulsoth." He looked up, surprised only by the softness in the admission. "Then you know how it should sound." She nodded. Her pen hovered. Then she drew a single line beneath her note as if signing it. "It doesn't sound like me." He leaned into the console, opening an offline diff tool. No touching live systems, no crossing lines. A side-by-side of 2 versions of Pulsoth, the module that guarded the door. Left pane Ava's last signed release. Right pane what ran last night. Thousands of lines of code, most of it clean familiar. But a few places, different. Not loud, not proud. Different like a book someone reprinted with 2 sentence breaks missing and 1 comma in the wrong place, just enough to teach the next sentence a different meaning. There, he said, a helper function renamed a validation step, optimized a log level changed from warn to info. Backdoors don't knock. They repaint the door and leave it looking new. Ava underlined the line that bothered her most. Validation shortened by 18 ebinus. Why, she underlined it again. 18 milliseconds is a gift, Daniel said, enough to slip a token through during the chorus. On the far table, the building's old laser printer coughed out a fresh page from an earlier archive Ava had requested. She pulled it, scanned the header. Her finger pressed the dates. 3 weeks ago, he read. Someone slipped this in before the dress rehearsal. She opened the code signature manifest. Every release in Voxera's pipeline was signed with her key, her voice, but for software. The latest Pulsoth showed author A. Sterling, but the signature line told a different story, key mismatch a warning hidden under a flood of green CI checks. They didn't break your code, Daniel said quietly. They broke the line that proves it's yours. Ava's shoulders tightened, then steadied. She wrote, "You, supply chain." The letters were neat, teacher clean. She added, "Who can sign for me without my key?" Then, answering herself, "No one." They bypassed signature enforcement. Daniel's pencil clicked once, or they disabled the alarm and put a new bulb in. They worked in a rhythm that didn't need choreography. Ava fetched the artifacts, Daniel traced the seams. They circled modules like detectives circling a stain on a carpet, then pulled the rug to see the floorboards. At 1:10 a.m., the pattern sharpened. A scheduled task, cleanup, legacy.sh, ran at 2:52 a.m., 10 minutes before the crash. It belonged to a maintenance bot account used to trim logs before archiving. The job had been modified yesterday. Ava's eyes narrowed. She zoomed into the audit metadata. Owner, SVC Schwach, maint bot. Modified by SVC, maint bot. Source, IP internal. The kind of trail that wants to look boring. Bots don't wake up and rewrite their jobs without a person telling them to, Daniel said. Someone put a glove puppet on your maintenance account. Ava jotted a new heading on paper for later interview DevOps job schedulers, SecOps signing release ang manifest. Then, on the glass, Ing lies wearing gloves. He smiled, thought you might like that one. She tapped the marker twice against the phrase as if to say I did. At 1:37 a.m., a junior engineer, Aaron, hesitated at the door with 2 coffees and a guilty conscience. She looked 24, exhausted and brave. Miss Miss Sterling, she asked, nerve and decency fighting. I pulled the old backup from the tape robot like you asked. Ava accepted the coffees with a nod of thanks and pointed Aaron to the far terminal. Daniel stepped back, letting Aaron in, keeping to the edge like a shadow that knows its place. Aaron's eyes slid to him, puzzled. She looked at Ava at the mop, back at the glass board crowded with code, then back at Ava again. Is he? part of this. Ava held the younger woman's gaze a beat longer than normal. Then she picked up the marker and wrote large enough to be read through a storm. "He hears what we miss." Aaron swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." Daniel took one of the coffees, lifted it slightly in Aaron's direction. "Thanks for the tape robot," he said. "You just saved us an hour that we don't have." Her shoulders loosened. "I don't like tidy logs," she blurted, then blushed. "They scare me." "Good instinct," he said. "Keep it." The printer coughed again. One more page, this one not code, but a release note from 2 Mondays ago. A hotfix had been pushed under the label Hotfix 11203. Author A. Sterling. Reviewed by N.A. Sign-off auto approved. The words no one should ever see in a company that sells trust. Ava's jaw worked. She circled auto approved hard enough to squeak. "My process doesn't allow this." She drew a line straight down to a single word. Override. Daniel studied the metadata footers. "See this build ID." He wrote the last 6 characters on his notebook and compared them to the artifact hash in the manifest. One letter didn't match. One letter that would slide past a tired eye at 2 a.m. "They changed one character in a 64-character hash," he said softly. "That's not sloppiness. That's someone whispering to the gate and teaching it a new password." Across the room, Aaron shivered. Who would do that? Daniel didn't answer. Not his place. The code would speak the names in due time. Ava picked up a fresh sticky note and wrote in small, careful letters like, "You write when the words are heavier than the paper. You walked away when it cost you." She slid it toward him. He looked at it, then at her. "I didn't walk," he said. "I was pushed, but I landed standing." Something gentle warmed her expression. She placed the note back on her clipboard as if saving it. They moved again. The night thinned to essentials, the scrape of a chair, the soft throat laugh when a test passed the quiet, when something ugly made sense. At 2:19 a.m., they caught the glove. The cleanup equac legacy.sh job had been altered from a jump host that belonged to infrastructure. The edit happened during a maintenance window that no one had logged in the calendar. The operator name had been masked behind SVC for maint bot, but the terminal profile left a breadcrumb, a personalized alias L instead of Ella's captured in the shell history of the jump host's temp partition. Aaron whispered odd truth leaves fingerprints. Ava lifted her marker and, underlined by all the hours that had brought them here, wrote Shiktu and courage is how we dust. Daniel exhaled long and low. "Paper beats script," he said, and fed the printer a last job, the diff of Pulsoth, the job scheduler change log, and the manifest mismatch 3 pages that a delete key couldn't eat. He slid the warm stack into a manila envelope and wrote on the tab, "Evidence, offline." He handed it to Ava. She held it like a lifeline. Outside, somewhere far below, a siren wailed and then faded. The sky had paled from ink to graphite. They were running out of night. Ava capped the marker, and for the second time since they'd begun, let a word cross the space between them without the glass to carry it. "Thanks," she whispered. Daniel didn't make a ceremony of it. "You don't owe me," he said. "You owe the truth. The truth likes to be paid in full." She tucked the envelope into a leather folio and thumped it closed. The sound was small but final. Then she wrote the next step, no tremor in her hand now. Daylight Plan, DevOps 9, UIDO 0. SecOps 9:30. Release Eng 10:15. Legal on standby. She paused, then added, Protect Aaron. Daniel glanced at the junior engineer. Aaron pretended to be fascinated by the tape robot. He smiled. "We will." They cleaned the board, not erasing the heart of it, just freshening the edges so the morning crew could understand the map at a glance. Daniel wheeled his cart to the door, then stopped and turned back. "One more thing," he said. "Keep a copy where scripts can't reach." She tilted her head. He tapped the leather folio. "In there, yes. And one more where they'll never think to look." He lifted the lid of his mop bucket. Beneath the clean rags in a dry plastic sleeve lay a folder the exact size of an admission ticket. He placed the second printout inside. She raised an eyebrow, amused despite herself. "Back doors forget to search the closet," he said. "Old janitor trick." Ava's smile reached her eyes this time. She wrote the last line of the night in small letters at the corner of the glass like a private vow disguised as a footnote. "We tell the story before someone else does." Daniel nodded. Line by line. They stepped into the corridor together. The building yawned awake, elevators humming the first wave of footsteps. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. A rhythm had begun, honest and a little noisy, exactly how truth is supposed to sound. Day 6 began with a promise Daniel made to himself in the mirror. Hold the line. Keep the noise honest. Get Emily to school on time. He spread peanut butter the way she liked triangles, not squares, and slipped a note into her lunchbox the way she liked even more. Make something today. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. Dad, by mid-afternoon, the interviews had bruised the company's patience. DevOps swore their windows were clean. SecOps swore their alarms were loud. Release engineering swore no one had override power. Somewhere in that chorus, Daniel kept catching the quiet, the place where the lie hummed. Ava hadn't raised her voice, she hadn't needed to. In a conference room with shades half drawn, she used the manila envelope like a metronome, laying down facts in an order that refused to be hurried. She still didn't say much, but when she did, it was the kind of sentence that made the table stop fidgeting. At 3:20 p.m., the building supervisor, Rita, flagged Daniel near the service elevator. "You said you were swapping the floor pads at 4. "You still good, he said, then hesitated. "I've got Emily for 30 minutes before after school. Her art club let out early. I'll keep her with me. We'll stay out of the way." Rita considered this, thumb-tapping her radio. "Lobby only," she said. Then softer, "unless Miss Sterling clears it." Daniel nodded. "Understood." They met in the lobby, Emily with paint freckles on her fingers and a backpack twice her size. She barreled into him with the force of a small comet. "Dad, Miss Lacey said I made a statement." She phrased the last word like it had glitter on it. "What statement did you make?" he asked, smiling. "That you can be quiet and still be brave," she said solemnly like a scientist announcing a discovery. Then she glanced at his cart. "Are we going upstairs?" "Only if we get permission." He ruffled her hair. "We ask. We wait. We listen." Emily nodded. She was good at rules when they protected people. They reached the security desk. Daniel explained, the guard called upstairs. 90 seconds later, the elevator dinged and opened like a held breath. Ava stepped out a quiet storm in a navy blazer, a visitor badge in one hand, and a soft astonishment in her eyes when she saw Emily. The badge read, "Emily Brooks Guest Art Delivery." Ava offered it to the girl with a small, careful smile. Emily accepted it like a medal. "Thank you," she said, and if the word carried a little too much heart for an ordinary exchange, no one corrected her. Rita gave a once-over. 10 minutes, she told Daniel, but her voice had the mercy of an extra 5. They rode up together. The elevator's mirror showed the oddest trio, a CEO who had learned to use silence like a scalpel, a janitor who had learned to make it a prayer, and a child who hadn't learned to fear it at all. On the 32nd floor, the war room stood in clean lines. Glass-gleaming whiteboard reset the earlier notes wiped, but not forgotten. Ava guided them to a side table and set out a fresh stack of printer paper. She placed a jar of markers beside it, the good kind, the ones that didn't lie about their colors. Emily took her place like she'd trained for it. She pulled a sheet toward her, tested a green, then a blue. "Do you want me to draw something for this office?" She asked the air, but she looked at Ava. Ava's throat moved. She reached for the marker and instead of writing on the glass, flipped a sticky note and wrote on the back with careful strokes. "Yes, please." Emily nodded like a captain acknowledging a course. She got to work. Daniel stood a step back, hands in his pockets, pretending not to beam. He watched Ava watch Emily, and he realized something simple and devastating. No boardroom had ever been kinder to Ava than this child was in the first 5 seconds of meeting her. The drawing came fast and slow the way good things arrive. First a line of city rectangles for skyscrapers, little dots for windows. Then, in the foreground, 3 figures, one tall one, taller one, small. The small one held a cord that ran from her chest to the tallest figure's hand. The cord was colored like a sunset orange, then pink, then the soft blue you only see right before the street lights turn on. "What's the cord?" Daniel asked. Emily didn't look up. "It's listening," she said. "Sometimes people talk with their ears." Ava's breath hitched. She caught it with a hand over her mouth and steadied it like you steady a tray full of water. She stepped closer. Emily picked a black pen and in neat, careful block letters at the top of the page wrote, "People who don't talk still have the biggest things to say." The sentence hung in the room like light. Ava touched the corner of the paper, then touched her heart. She tried for a word. It came out as a thin, brave thread. Beautiful. Emily glanced up, eyes bright. "You can talk," she said, surprised only in the way you're surprised by sunshine after rain. "Only when you want to." "That's okay." Ava nodded. "When I want to." She looked at Daniel, and the look said everything she didn't trust her mouth to carry. "Thank you for bringing her. Thank you for staying." He tilted his head in answer without sound. "Any time. Always." Back at the glass wall, the schedule Ava had written earlier waited like a map. DevOps, SecOps, Release, Ing, Legal. The things of war. But here at the table, a smaller war was ending. Emily capped her marker satisfied. "Can we put it where people see it, when they feel small?" she asked. Ava moved to the glass, lifted a magnetic clip from the edge of the whiteboard and pinned the drawing at eye level by the door. She straightened it until it hung clean. Then she wrote beneath the caption in her own hand a reply that wasn't to the room so much as to her own past "I hear you." The clock nudged 3:45. Rita's 10 minutes had come and gone. Daniel shifted conscience prodding. "We should head down," he said gently. "Miss Lacey will wonder where her star artist went." Emily slung her backpack and reached for the drawing. Ava put a hand up, a question in her eyes. Emily understood. "You can keep it," she said. "It was always yours." The sentence cracked something open in Ava, something old and stubborn, something that believed gifts had to be earned with performance. She blinked hard. She reached for a tissue, found none, and instead found Daniel's napkin somehow still in her desk drawer, folded and waiting. She pressed it to her eyes, then to her lips, then folded it back like a letter. "Before we go," Emily said, and tugged Daniel's sleeve. "Show her the thing." The thing Daniel stalled. Emily nodded, urgent. "The broom." He laughed under his breath. "It's not special, kiddo. It's just—" "It is," she insisted. "You told me it's not just to clean up messes, it's to start again." Ava looked between them. Curiosity softened her fatigue. Daniel opened the cart and pulled out the old push broom he'd kept longer than policy permitted. The wood was worn shiny where his hands had taught it his day. On the handle, in faded marker, Emily had once printed 2 words in her best efforts at cursive "Start Here." Ava reached toward the words but didn't touch, as if it might smudge. Daniel found himself saying, "When things get broken, people want a magic button. I don't have that. I have this. You start where you are, you push what you can, and you keep the floor honest so people don't slip." Ava's eyes lifted to his. Keep the floor honest. She nodded with a seriousness that made the phrase into a vow. From the hallway, a shadow passed, the kind of presence you feel before you see. Mason Hale walked by without breaking stride, tie knife-sharp cologne broadcasting money and impatience. His gaze skimmed the room, paused a half-second at the child, then filed the scene under "useful later." He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The temperature of the hallway dropped 2 degrees. Emily leaned closer to Daniel. "Is that a mean person?" she whispered. He kept his voice even. "That's a person with a job that's different from ours." "What's our job?" she asked. "Keep the floor honest," he said. "And the story." Ava turned from the door, set back in place. Whatever came with Mason could wait until Chapter 5 of their war. This moment belonged to 3 people and a drawing and a sentence that had found its home. Emily stuck out her hand, small and steady. "Can I hold yours?" she asked, eyes on Ava. Ava looked at the hand like it was an instrument she hadn't learned to play. She placed her palm in Emily's. Warm. Real. A current ran up her arm that wasn't fear. It was presence, pure and immediate. Emily gave a gentle squeeze, the kind that says, "I'm here," without making a speech. Ava tried another word on the air. "Thank you," she whispered. Emily grinned. "You're welcome," she said, and it sounded like a bell. They walked back to the elevator together, Daniel with his cart, Emily with her backpack, Ava with the drawing's echo now pinned inside her chest. At the doors, the girl turned and waved at the glass wall. "Bye, picture," she said. "Do your job." The elevator opened. Rita gave Daniel a look that said both thank you and don't make me be the bad guy. He nodded. "We're out," he promised. Ava held the doors with a hand. She looked at Emily, then at Daniel, then lifted her free hand and pressed 2 fingers to her lips, then to the glass by the drawing, the same gesture she'd used once with a manila envelope labeled evidence. A salute, but kinder. As the doors slid shut, Emily called, "We'll come back if you need more pictures." The elevator carried them down. When it was gone, Ava turned to the board and under the caption beneath, "I hear you," she added one more line. Not for the team, not for the board, but for herself. "I will speak when it matters. I will listen always." She stood there a long moment, breathing evenly. The building's hum came back into focus, the printers, the HVAC key, the phones, the quiet work of people trying. She took the napkin from her pocket, folded once more, and put it away like a promise she intended to keep. Back in the lobby, Emily swung Daniel's hand. Dad. You know your sentence." "Which one, miracles are just problems that met the right people in the right order," she recited. "Maybe we're the right people." He thought of a log that finally told the truth of a broom that knew its lane, of a CEO who finally held a child's hand and didn't flinch. He squeezed back. "Maybe we are," he said. Upstairs, the drawing watched the hallway like a kind guard. People slowed when they passed it. Some smiled, some stood taller. Some, for reasons they didn't stop to name, went back to fix one more thing before they went home. And the system, broken as it still was, felt 1 degree closer to honest because a girl with paint on her fingers had written the rules in a language everyone understood. Day 7 dawned with a bruise-colored sky and a feeling in the building you could almost taste metallic like coins on the tongue. Voxera was still standing, but the floorboards creaked. At 8:06 a.m., the war room filled with the right people in the right order. Ava arrived, first a folio under her arm hair, pinned with the kind of precision that says, "I am not breaking today." Daniel rolled his cart to its corner notebook, ready, boundaries clear. Erin slipped in with a laptop hugged to her chest, eyes wide but steady the way people look when they already chose courage. On the glass wall, Ava wrote the day's purpose the way you pin a compass to a map. Ihuru, find the exit. Find the hands. Erin tapped a key. "I pulled VPC flow logs from the mirror we keep in the forensics bucket," she said, glancing at Daniel, then back to Ava. "Read only. Off prod. No changes." She was learning how to say safe in this language. Rows of connection records marched across the screen, timestamps, source destination bytes in and out. Daniel leaned close, not touching, just listening with his eyes. "Noise first," he said. "What do we expect?" Erin highlighted the usual suspects, content delivery analytics, the third-party payment processor. "Now, the part that scares me," she whispered and filtered for the hour before the crash. A new domain pulsed up like a lighthouse in fog latency, cdn.net. Harmless name, harmless ports. But the volume, those weren't pings. Those were buckets emptying. Ava's marker squeaked. "Eck, sync," Erin swallowed. "The source IP is our maintenance subnet. The service account is the same SVCT maint bot from the cleanup script." She zoomed. Every 20 minutes for 2 weeks, small drips. Then at 2:52 a.m., a surge. Daniel murmured drip so no one hears the faucet. Surge when the house is empty. Ava drew a box around latencycdn.net and wrote beneath it, alias for object storage. She was already steps ahead. Who registered it? Erin shook her head. Not us. It's masked through a registrar in Delaware. Daniel stilled. Delaware isn't a clue by itself. Half of America's corporations hide there. But the pattern was clean in a way that made his teeth ache. Can we resolve where it actually lands? He asked. Erin nodded, fingers quick. Name. Chain points to a cloud bucket. Provider obfuscated, but the certificate is... She leaned in. Wildcard cert covering latencycdn.net and metricsarchive.us. Ava printed the certificate chain to paper habit chain of custody, something a delete key couldn't bully. She slid the warm page into the folio. What moved, she wrote on the glass. What exactly moved Erin looked at Daniel for permission and got it. She pulled a sanitized sample from the mirrored logs, a handful of JSON lines with fields redacted, just the bones of what had been poured. You didn't need the private parts to see the shape session ID's device, fingerprints, geographic hints, model inferences labeled confidence high. Not credit cards, not passwords, but enough to sketch a life. Ava's face tightened. Our privacy policy forbids off-site copies. She said the words low but clear enough to count. Not without explicit legal review, not without anonymization. Daniel's voice was a soft hammer. Neatness is not innocence. They traced the pipeline backward. SVC maintbot called cleanup.legacy.sh, which called syncocmetrics.py, a script with no history in their repo. Its comment header was a DARE temporary metrics export. Do not remove. The job read a secret named maintenance cleanup from the vault. The secret held an environment variable called sync URL. The variable pointed to latencycdn.net. Ava underlined do not remove 3 times. People write that when they know they shouldn't have, she said. Her eyes lifted to Daniel. We have a theft. We have a path. He raised a guardrail before the room ran ahead of itself. We prove more, we accuse less, he said. Flow logs, job history, secret change records, cert chain. We staple them together, date sign. We keep our hands clean so the story stays clean. Erin breathed out. I can pull secret manager audit logs, she said. Who changed maintenance, cleanup? Do it, Ava said. Minutes later, the log flashed up 3 edits in 3 weeks. The last change 3 days ago came from a workstation behind a jump host. The user, not a human. The SVC he maint bot again. But the jump host's temp partition, as if eager to be found by people who loved the truth, had cached a prompt history that captured an alias L, the same breadcrumb from the night they dusted. Ava wrote crisp as a gavel. Human behind glove TBD. She caught Daniel's eye. If this goes public before we fix it, she said, we don't just miss a launch. We break trust with people who never gave us permission to break them. Then we fix it, he said, and we tell it before someone else does. She nodded. Legal at 11, she said. Not to hide, to prepare how we repair. He allowed himself the smallest smile. Paper beats script. The door opened without a knock. The room leaned colder by instinct before the air had a chance to change. Mason Hale stepped in a silver knot of a tie and an expression that did not waste time on nuance. Update, he said, not asking. Ava slid the folio an inch closer to her side. We've identified an unauthorized export path, she said, voice even. We're containing, verifying, and preparing to stop. Mason said, palm up. You're telling me we have a marketing telemetry pipe mislabeled, and you want to turn this company into a courtroom drama 10 hours before a global launch. No, Ava said. I'm telling you, we have a data exfiltration backdoor routed through a maintenance account masked with a shell domain, and it moved model outputs off-site without review. Mason's eyes flicked to Daniel, then to Erin, then back to Ava. He smiled the way some people bare teeth. "Why is the janitor in this room?" Daniel didn't flinch. He'd been furniture in better rooms. Ava didn't look away. "Because he hears what we miss." Mason stepped closer, lowering his voice until it was only for them. "You will not tank a billion-dollar launch over a paperwork quibble," he said. "You will find me a scapegoat that doesn't wear a suit and a fix that doesn't touch the press." Aaron's breath snagged. Daniel put a hand flat on the table. "Not a fist, just wait." "Neat stories get people hurt," he said. "Honest ones cost less in the end." Mason turned his head slowly. "I didn't ask you." Daniel shrugged once. "You will." Ava stood the movement quiet but complete. She held Mason's gaze. "Silence is not consent," she said. "Not from me. Not from our users." Something flickered in Mason annoyance, then calculation. He pivoted to strategy. "Contain it," he said. "Fix your little text file. Lock down your little robot. And keep your little friend out of rooms where adults are working." Ava didn't move. "We will contain it," she said. "We will fix it, and we will document, disclose, and make it right." She nodded toward Daniel and Aaron. "We will." Mason leaned in, breath expensive. "You enjoy your little rescue mission," he whispered. "When this is over, you will keep your genius pet on a leash or out of the building." Daniel didn't take the bait. He looked at Ava, not at Mason, and said the line that steadied the day. "We keep the floor honest so people don't slip." Mason scoffed. "People slip. It's how we learn to walk." He left. The temperature took its time coming back. Aaron's hands trembled over the keyboard. Do we keep going?" Ava pressed her palm to the glass beside. "Find the exit. Find the hands." "We do," she said. They kept going. By afternoon, the picture had edges. The forbidden script had landed 3 releases ago under the camouflage of hotfix UEVO 3, writing a build with an almost perfect hash. The secret that told it where to pour had been edited from a workstation passed through a jump host with a telltale alias. The egress had been feathered into the budget as latency telemetry and masked under a domain that wanted to be boring. Daniel laid the printouts flat, aligning corners, stapling reality to itself. He signed and dated the top page, then slid the stack into a new envelope and wrote, "Evidence, offline, V2." Ava took it as if taking custody of a fragile animal. "Legal will ask who touched what she said. Tell them a janitor touched nothing but paper," he said, and told stories to people who could touch the rest. A message buzzed Daniel's phone, a photo from Emily, a painting of 3 stick figures holding a rope of color. The caption read, "Made something today." He tapped back one sentence, "Me too." At 5:40 p.m., the day should have shifted toward dinner. Instead, it coiled for a late strike. Security pinged Ava board wants you in Conference A. Now. She looked at Daniel and Aaron. "Stay," she said. "Finish the chain, every link." She closed her fingers around the folio, squared her shoulders, and walked. Conference A had the kind of table that tells you how many zeros you're sitting on. Mason was at the head. 2 board members dialed in their faces, floating on the wall screens, crisp, remote, unimpressed. Mason didn't wait for pleasantries. "We've been informed," he said, "that you are elevating a non-issue into an existential threat and involving non-staff in sensitive matters." Ava placed the folio on the table, not sliding, not offering. "We have a back door," she said. "We have a path out of the building. We have audit log certificates and a secret changed by a glove puppet. We will not pretend this is a smudge on a mirror when it is a crack in the glass." One of the distant faces sighed. "Can you fix it without headlines?" "Yes," Ava said. "By telling the truth before someone else does." Mason's jaw ticked. "We don't owe anyone a confession," he said. "We owe our investors a launch." Ava's hand rested lightly on the folio. "We owe our users the thing we promised," she said. "Care." Mason leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Here are your options," he said, pleasant as poison. "You fix it quietly, and we launch. Or you make it a sermon, and we consider new leadership that understands the cost of candles." Ava inhaled. When she spoke, it was a whisper that felt louder than any shout. "I will not barter trust for applause." Mason's smile didn't change. "Then, understand me, Ava." He said the first-name intimacy the opposite of kindness. "Keep the janitor out of your office. Keep your little intern off my logs. And keep your voice in your pocket unless I reach for it." She stood, gathering the folio. "My voice isn't in your pocket," she said. "It's mine." The meeting ended without adjournment. She stepped into the hallway where the air didn't taste like varnish. For a moment, she leaned against the wall, the outline of the folio pressed into her ribs like a shield. Down the corridor, Daniel waited, not hovering, just available the way light waits for a hand to flip a switch. She walked to him, the sound of her heels a metronome that matched his pulse. "Bad?" he asked. "Clear," she said. He searched her face and found the thing he'd been praying for without naming it: resolve, clean, and bright. "Then we keep going." She nodded. "Tomorrow," she said. The voice within. He didn't ask what she meant. He knew. She turned the folio so the tab faced outward evidence, offline, and tucked it under her arm like a story she had decided to tell. As they reached the elevators, the drawing Emily had made watched from the whiteboard, its caption steady as sunrise. "People who don't talk still have the biggest things to say." Ava's gaze landed on the line. She touched 2 fingers to her lips, then to the glass, a promise to a room, and to herself. "We won't be neat," Daniel said. "But we'll be honest." Ava nodded. "Neatness is not innocence," she said, and the doors opened as if the building agreed. Day 11 started before the light. Ava lay awake in her apartment listening to a city that never gave permission slips for courage. She watched the ceiling breathe and counted the seconds between sirens like a child measuring thunder. When she couldn't pretend she was resting anymore, she dressed, pinned her hair with the precision of a promise, and walked to the office while the streetlights were still arguing with dawn. The 32nd floor was empty enough to tell the truth. Her keycard chirped. The war room waited, glass-wiped, clean markers lined up Emily's drawing pinned at eye level by the door, 3 figures, a sunset-colored cord, and a sentence that refused to soften with time. "People who don't talk still have the biggest things to say." Ava stood in front of it as if standing in front of a mirror that showed her better. She pressed 2 fingers to her lips, then to the glass. "Good morning," she tried, and no sound came. Her throat closed like a fist around a note. She didn't panic. Panic is a hallway with too many doors. She had learned to sit on the floor and pick one. On the whiteboard, she wrote a heading, rehearse truth. Beneath it, numbers like a child practicing scales. 1. I owe the truth. Her 2. Silence is not consent. 3. We tell the story before someone else does. Her phone buzzed a text from an unknown number with a heart emoji and a voice attachment. She hesitated, thumb hovering, then pressed play. Emily's voice filled the room like light-finding corners. "Hi, Miss Sterling, it's me, Emily. I'm whispering because Dad is still sleeping. I used to be scared to talk at school. Miss Lacey said, whisper counts. Dad said, brave is a little step you take twice. If you get scared today, you can borrow my brave. Say it with me. I owe the truth. If your mouth doesn't like it, your eyes can say it first. Okay, bye." Ava laughed and cried in the same breath, a sound softer than paper. She replayed it once, then set the phone down face up on the table like a candle. "Borrow my brave," she repeated silently, and felt the shape of the words land without shattering. The elevator pinged. Daniel stepped in with the careful stride of a man who didn't want to spill the morning. He paused in the doorway, reading the room the way some men read forecasts, noticing the drawing, noticing the phone, noticing her. "You're early," he said. "So are you?" She answered, no sound, just the shape, but he read it anyway. Some sentences live in the eyes. He parked his cart, reached beneath it, and set a chipped ceramic mug on the table. The handwriting on it was Emily's in brave marker, "Start here." He poured hot water from a thermos dropped in a tea bag. No coffee this time. Something gentle. He nodded toward the board. "Good list," he said. She pointed to the first line. He held up 3 fingers. "We'll take them one by one. We're not climbing a mountain. We're taking a walk and picking up 3 stones." She smiled without showing teeth. He set the broom upright bristle end down handle, reaching chest height. "Microphone," he said. "No audience. No spotlight. Just me and the mop." Her mouth tipped at the corner. "Broom," she corrected in her head. "First stone," he said. "Short. True. Yours. Say it to one person, not the room. Rooms can wait." He stepped back, but not far. His presence was a handrail. Ava inhaled through her nose low and wide like she practiced when the world narrowed. She looked not at the glass, not at the markers, not at the city. She looked at him. A person, not a crowd. I. The word caught slid returned like a fish that refused the net. She closed her eyes. He didn't rush. 4 in, he said. Hold, 4 out. Again. They breathed. The tea steamed. The city light climbed 1 floor. When she tried again, the sound came like a shy animal, fragile but real. She anchored her heels, not her voice. "I-O." A pause. She finished on the exhale. The truth. He didn't applaud. Applause can scare first steps. He nodded like a carpenter measuring straight. "There it is." She took another breath, smaller now, more hers. "Silence is not consent," she whispered, and the words landed with the weight of a gavel. Lowered, not slammed. He leaned the broom against the table and came closer. "One more," he said, "because 3s are sturdy." Her eyes slid to the whiteboard. "We tell the story before someone else does." The sentence was the length of a hallway. She shortened it to a door she could walk through. "We tell the story," she said. Then stronger, "we tell it." Daniel's shoulders eased. "Voice works like courage," he said. "It shows up when invited, not when dragged." She nodded. Some part of her, the part that kept lists and budgets and calendars, clicked a stopwatch and recorded the moment for sentences spoken in the war room. First steps toward daylight. Again, he asked. She did. Each time a little cleaner, a little less afraid of her own sound. Not loud, never loud, but present. She reached into her blazer pocket, found the napkin, the one he had placed on her desk the night everything fell apart. She held it like a talisman and let her voice brush it on the way out. They took a break. He poured her tea. She wrapped both hands around the mug the way people hold a small creature they intend to protect. He pulled a chair, turned it backward, sat with forearms on the back like a man who knew every corner of a union hall and a nursery. "How did it start?" he asked. Not the code. Her quiet. She could have lied. Managers learn to use fog like weather. Instead, she looked at the part of the city that reflected their faces back to them and spoke as if reading a note she'd once sworn to burn. "I told the truth," she said. "At my old company. We had a founder who liked to borrow from places he didn't credit. I raised it. They edited my talk, cut my words, pasted them in a clip like I'd confessed to something I didn't do." She swallowed. The internet did the rest. After that, speaking felt like leaving the door unlocked and hoping nothing walked in. Daniel didn't tell her it would never happen again. He didn't promise. Promise is a kind of currency he spent carefully. "You don't owe the internet a voice," he said. "You owe the truth a home." She nodded. A tear stood on the lower lid and did not fall. "I built a company that uses silence like steel," she said, and somehow it became a cage. He turned his palm up on the table between them, not touching, just offering ground. "Steel makes bridges, too." She let that sit. She touched the tips of her fingers to the wood near his hand, close enough to feel the quiet hum of another person. "Emily's message," she said, voice small. "Borrow my brave." He smiled. "She's got a surplus." A chime sounded, 9 a.m. The day had taken its seat. Ava stood, wiped her hands on her blazer like a boxer wiping the ropes, and faced the board again. 1. I owe the truth. 2. Silence is not consent. 3. We tell the story. Record it, Daniel said. Not to send, to hear yourself. Your ears are good judges. She opened her phone, tapped voice memos, and held it awkwardly like a tool that belonged to someone else. Ava, he said, and she lifted her eyes. Say it to me. She did. The 3 lines. In a voice that would never fill a stadium and never needed to. When she played it back, she braced for the flinch that had lived in her bones for years. It didn't come. She heard a woman who had stopped apologizing for her volume. It sounds like me, she said. It is you, he said. She added a 4th line on the board without ceremony. I speak when it matters. I listen always. The morning passed in short, clean pieces. Legal at 10 via conference line. Ava spoke 3 sentences and let counsel take the rest. She practiced in the elevator between floors murmurs timed to the ride. She walked the corridor and nodded to the drawing as if it were a colleague with a badge. At noon, Erin slipped in with 2 sandwiches and the same look she'd worn on day 7 Courage in sneakers. Missy Sterling, she asked. The team is asking if you're addressing us at 3. Ava glanced at Daniel. He didn't answer for her. He looked at the board, then at her shoes, then at her face the way a friend checks knots before you climb. I am Ava, said aloud to Erin to the room, to the part of herself that still thought whispering didn't count. At 3. Erin blinked, then smiled like the lights had come back in a room she loved. Yes, ma'am, she said, and left. They spent the next 2 hours not polishing sentences, but polishing intent. Daniel showed her a grounding trick he used when panic made the world too bright. 4 blue things. 3 textures. 2 sounds. 1 promise. What's my promise? She asked. He didn't answer. Some questions are doors you have to open yourself. At 2:47, she stood at the back of the war room and looked at the chairs filling engineers, ops, finance humans who had stayed up too late to build something they wanted to be proud of. Erin sat near the front, hands knotted in her lap. The drawing watched from the wall. Daniel took his usual place edge of the room cart, parked invisible until presence was needed. He touched the broom handle once like a runner tapping a lucky sign. Ava breathed the 4 in the hold, the 4 out. She felt the napkin in her pocket like a friend squeezing her hand. She stepped to the glass not as a warrior going to war, but as a builder going to work. Good afternoon, she said. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Heads turned because truth has a gravity of its own. We had a failure. She continued each phrase placed like a beam. Not just of code, of trust. We're fixing both. You will see the work. You will see the words we give our users. We will tell the story before someone else does. You could feel the room lean forward, fear loosening its tie, respect putting on its jacket. Erin's shoulders dropped an inch. Someone exhaled as if they'd been holding it since day 1. Ava's gaze found Daniel at the edge. He didn't nod. He didn't need to. He looked at her the way a person looks at a lighthouse that finally remembered its job. She closed with the line she had written for herself and now spoke for the room. I will speak when it matters, she said, steady as a level. I will listen always. She stepped back. Silence arrived, not the heavy kind that punishes the clean kind that says we heard you and need a second to feel it. Then the room answered the way decent rooms do, chair legs scraped. Someone said, thank you. Someone else said, let's go. It wasn't applause, it was consent to do the work. After, in the quiet that follows storms, Daniel joined her by the drawing. He didn't say proud of you, it would have been the right words in the wrong key. He said, see ears are good judges. Ava touched the corner of the paper and smiled, real and entire. Borrowed her brave, she said. Keep it, he answered. She has more. She looked at the city, and at the board, and at her hands that had stopped shaking. Tomorrow would be the boardroom trial. Tomorrow would be the part where Courage has to wear a suit and make eye contact with knives. But tonight she had a voice. Not loud, not showy, hers. When she left the war room, she paused at the door, pressed 2 fingers to her lips, then to the glass for the second time that day. Thank you, she said soft clear, and finally out loud to a child's drawing to a janitor's patience and to the part of herself that had waited years to come home. Day 14 dressed itself in glass and nerves. Manhattan glittered like it had never heard of sleep. On Voxera's executive floor, the air had the polish of money and the charge of a thunderstorm. Ava arrived early with the folio hugged to her side and a slip of paper in her pocket that said in her own handwriting, "I owe the truth." Daniel walked with her as far as the conference wing and stopped as they'd agreed. He didn't have a badge for the table, but he had a place in the hallway within sight of the door within reach if the floor went slick. He set his cart by a wall sconce and leaned the broom there handle up like a flag without a country. 4. In hold. 4 out, he said softly. Ava nodded. "I will speak when it matters," she answered, and her voice still small, still hers did not tremble. Inside, Conference A, a table the size of a boat, waited for its storm. Mason Hale sat at the head jaw carved to a point cufflinks catching the light like ice. 2 board members beamed in from city towers of their own. Their faces floated on wall screens, crisp and remote. The CFO General Counsel and the head of HR flanked the long sides like pillars in a temple whose gods were numbers. Ava took her seat. She placed the folio in front of her spine aligned with the table's edge. General Counsel, a woman with eyes like a level, gave the smallest nod. "Proceed when ready." Mason didn't wait. "We are 10 hours from a global launch," he began, voice pitched for control more than comfort. "Yet our CEO has chosen to elevate a minor telemetry issue into a theatrics rehearsal. We have investors. We have markets. We do not have time to indulge paranoia." Ava folded her hands, let the tide of his sentence run out, and put her stone in the river. "We have a back door," she said. "We have a path out of the building. We have audit trails that say so in their own handwriting." The room cooled a degree. General Counsel spoke, even careful. "Ms. Sterling, please summarize the findings and the scope of potential exposure." Ava opened the folio. The paper made a sound like a page in church. "Over the last 3 weeks, she said our maintenance service account, SVC Maint Bot, executed a modified cleanup job that also invoked an untracked script syncmetrics.p, pointing to a secret called maintenance cleanup." She slid the first exhibit across a print of the vault's change log. That secret contained sync URL, a masked domain, latencycdn.net, snamed to cloud storage behind a wildcard certificate that also covers metricsarchive.us. She placed the certificate chain next to the first page. The CFO leaned forward despite himself. "VPC flow logs show low-volume egress every 20 minutes, Ava continued. "A surge at 2:52 a.m. on the night of the crash. Not credit cards, but device fingerprint session metadata and model inferences labeled confidence high enough to sketch a life. None of it reviewed by legal, none of it authorized." She set down the job diff for cleanup, legacy.sh, and the manifest mismatch for hotfix 1203, that almost perfect hash with one letter singing off-key. We also found signature enforcement bypassed on the Pulse Auth module. It reported my authorship while wearing a false key. She stopped. Let the paper speak. Let silence carry what volume could not. On the screen, one of the remote directors removed his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Is the path closed?" he asked. "Production path blocked." "Secrets rotated," Ava said. "We've placed a litigation hold on relevant logs and artifacts. No live systems were touched during analysis. We produced read-only forensics with chain of custody." She placed the top sheet of the folio face up. "Evidence, offline, V2, dated, signed." Mason smiled without warmth. "We moved some housekeeping. We call lawyers. We make a fix, then we launch," he said, spreading his hands as if describing weather. "We do not sermonize." General Counsel's eyes tightened by a millimeter. "We will need to evaluate notification obligations," she said. "Ava, how did this come to your attention?" Ava could have played coy. Instead, she set the choice on the table like a coin and let it land on its true face. A janitor noticed noise that was missing, she said. Silence pressed its palm to the table. Mason pounced. A janitor, he said, rolling the word like gum. And is the janitor in our release process now? Is the janitor qualified to? No, Ava said cleanly. He did not access live systems. He did not alter code. He listened. He saw patterns anyone could see if they cared to look. Paper beats script. He made sure we had paper. The head of HR, who had been very still, spoke for the first time. What's the human impact? She asked. Ava answered without reaching for poetry. If we pretend this is nothing, our people learn that neat lies matter more than noisy truth. We will not pretend. Mason shifted tactics. Then, by all means, let's not pretend, he said, voice turning silken. Let's admit the obvious. A junior engineer, he let the phrase hang like a target, went rogue. She'll resign. We'll issue a correction. We will not tank $1 billion launch over an intern with a GitHub itch. Aaron's face flashed in Ava's mind courage and sneakers. Ava slid the next page across the jump host's temp shell history, the alias, Al the breadcrumb, too personal for bots. This wasn't a junior, Ava said. This was a human behind a glove puppet. The edits came from Infrastructure's jump host during an unlogged maintenance window. We will confirm the operator with the provider, and we will not feed a kid to a machine to save a calendar. The remote director, who had taken off his glasses, put them back on and looked at Mason. Independent forensics, he said, not asking. Mason's jaw flicked. We have a launch, he repeated, as if volume could manufacture consent. Ava met the room like a lighthouse meets fog by staying where she was supposed to be. We can still launch, she said. Not by hiding, by fixing, by telling the story before someone else does. She lifted a smaller sheet, a draft of the user note. The words were simple and human. We found a path we didn't authorize. We closed it. We're auditing. Here's what never left. Here's what did. Here's how we'll do better and how you can hold us to it. Trust is not a silence we demand, she said. It is a conversation we earn. General Counsel exhaled as if something tight in her had just accepted a truth it already knew. Recommendations, she said, formal now. Ava counted them on her fingers. 1. Lock out SVC maint bot and rotate all maintenance secrets. 2. Freeze non-critical deploys. 3. Retain an external forensics firm and grant them unfiltered access. 4. Issue a user notice within 72 hours after counsel finishes scope. 5. Form a special committee of the board to oversee remediation. 6. No scapegoats. We fix systems, not headlines. The CFO spoke like a man measuring cliffs. Cost less than the cost of lying, Daniel would have said. Ava put it in the tone of a CEO. Expense now, stability later. We absorb. We move. The remote director nodded. Seconded, he said, looking not at Mason but at counsel. Draft the resolutions. Mason's smile thinned until it was mostly teeth. We are not a non-profit for feelings, he said. We ship. Ava didn't raise her voice. She set down her last stone. We don't ship trust we didn't earn, she said. Not from me. Not from this company. For a beat, no one moved. Then General Counsel spoke into the stillness. Vote, she said. One by one, hands rose, virtual and physical. The resolutions carried. A special committee was formed. An external firm would be retained. The maintenance account froze on a signature. Notifications would be drafted for users and regulators as required. And Ms. Sterling remains CEO. The remote director added crisp as a gavel until remediation is complete and the special committee reports. Mason's eyes cut to Ava. Calculus. Fire. A future plan. We'll revisit leadership when this display is over, he said, sweet as a blade. For now, congratulations. You've shackled a rocket to a morals lecture. Ava stood. We unshackled it from a theft, she said. That flies farther. The meeting adjourned itself without needing a word. In the hallway, Daniel straightened from the wall as if a weight had rolled off his back. He didn't ask how it went. He looked at her face and read the answer there. "Clear," he said. "Clear," she said, then softer for the two of them and the broom between them. "Thank you for the paper. Thank you for the voice," he said. They walked toward the war room, the corridor long and bright, the carpet muffling footsteps like a friend. Ava slowed by the drawing. 3 figures, a sunset chord, a sentence that had carried her here. People who don't talk still have the biggest things to say, she read this time aloud as if returning a borrowed book in better condition than she'd received it. Daniel watched her lift 2 fingers to her lips and touch the glass her benediction for the battles already fought and the ones ahead. "I'll see remediation through," she said, matter-of-fact, eyes on the work. Then I stepped down. He took that in without arguing because he knew this wasn't escape. It was finish. "You'll build other bridges," he said. "We will," she corrected gently. He smiled. "We will." Behind them, Mason walked past with a phone glued to his ear and impatience bleeding from his stride. For a second, his gaze met Daniel's. A flicker of future trouble ran between them like static. Daniel let it go. You can't mop a man's soul. You can only keep the floor honest and hope he doesn't like slipping. Back in the war room, Aaron was waiting with a stack of labels and a hunger to do the next right thing. "Do we have a plan?" she asked. Ava set the folio down and wrote on the glass in clean certain lines, "External forensics engaged." Secrets rotated. Special committee formed. Draft user notice. No scapegoats. She capped the marker and turned to them the janitor, the junior, the small brave army. "We fix the code," she said. "We fix the story." Daniel lifted the broom bristles, barely kissing the floor, and said the sentence that had become the room's backbone, line by line. Outside, the city tilted toward evening. Inside, the company reset its compass. And somewhere between a boardroom that had learned how to listen and a hallway where a child's drawing did its quiet work, Voxera found its first honest step toward daylight. Day 15 began with 2 emails that could not be confused. The first went to Voxera's users. "We found a path we never meant to open. We closed it. We are auditing. Here's what never left. Here's what did. Here's what we'll do next and how you can hold us to it." The second went only to the board. "I will oversee remediation through day 20. My resignation will be effective at month's end." A.S. Ava clicked. Send set the phone down like you set down a weight and stood in the war room one last time before the day took her away. On the glass, yesterday's vows still held, "We fix the code. We fix the story. No scapegoats." Daniel read the quiet in her shoulders. "You're handing it back cleaner than you found it." "Clean enough to be honest," she said. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. By noon, external forensics had a room secrets were rotated and legal owned a calendar full of obligations that spelled care. Ava signed what needed signing. Litigation holds regulator notices, a memo that said, "We do not barter trust for applause." She gave the pen back like a ribbon cut. At 3:40 p.m., she walked a last slow loop, thanking people with sentences shorter than hugs. She paused at Emily's drawing by the door, 3 figures joined by a sunset-colored cord. Beneath it, she added in tidy print, "We told it." Then she took off her badge, set it on the receptionist's desk, and stepped into an elevator that didn't know how much it was carrying. Downstairs, Daniel waited with his cart. The broom leaned like a standard. He could have said a dozen things. He chose one. Next chapter. Next chapter, she echoed. Day 16. 8:12 a.m. Rita met Daniel by the service elevator clipboard like a shield mouth kind. "You sure he handed her his badge? I'm good at leaving rooms cleaner than I found them." She blew out a breath that wasn't a laugh but wanted to be. "You did more than wax. You made the place. Stand up straighter." She fished a small cardboard box from under the desk. Inside lay a handful of things that almost never get saved. A name. Pin a key ring without keys and a scrap of paper. Emily once stuck to the cart crayon stars and the words, "Start here." "Don't tell policy," Rita said. "But take the good stuff." Daniel closed the flaps around a life measured in quiet halls. "Thank you, Rita," he said. "For the long hallways when I needed them. Go build a place with windows," she answered. "For kids who need them." Day 18, sunset. A realtor in sensible shoes, it said, Torres on her card, unlocked a corrugated metal door 3 blocks from a subway stop and 5 blocks from a public library. The warehouse inside was 40 feet of echo and dust light coming in through clear story panes like honest truth. "It smells like old projects," Emily whispered, stepping onto the concrete with reverence. Ava paced the perimeter, counting outlets with her eyes tracing exits, mapping where light could do its best work. "Zoned M1, Ms. Torres said, but it's been used for assembly. Landlords open to a community use with the right permits. At a panic bar on the rear exit. ADA-compliant ramp, out front, emergency lights, occupancy posted. Insurance. You know the drill." "We do," Ava said. The landlord, Mr. Alvarez, a man with a key ring heavy enough to anchor a boat, arrived with a handshake that said he'd seen neighborhoods change and survive anyway. "I don't want parties," he said. "I want kids safe and neighbors sleeping." Daniel nodded. "We run a 2-adult rule background checks for volunteers, sign in and sign out. Quiet hours at 9. Fire extinguisher every 75 feet. We'll post an emergency plan by the door." Mr. Alvarez's mouth twitched. "You've done this." "Different rooms," Daniel said. "Same rules." They took a month-to-month lease with an option to buy in 6. It felt like a promise with room to breathe. Day 19 through 21 were about brooms and beginnings. They swept until the dust stopped telling the last tenant's story. They rolled paint across cinder block bright enough to make the morning participate. A licensed electrician, Ms. Caldwell Forearms, like Trust, replaced cracked outlets and labeled a breaker panel that had given up on names years ago. A city inspector did a walkthrough with a badge that didn't require him to be unkind. "You'll need a handrail on that short run," he said, tapping the 3 steps up to a mezzanine. "Panic bar on the rear door. Exit lights tested monthly. Bathroom grab bars. Certificate of occupancy updated for assembly under 50. "Got it," Daniel said, making notes with the calm of a man who likes rules that keep people standing. "Soft opening can be a private workshop, while permits final," the inspector added. "No money at the door list of attendees adults present. Don't make me regret being human." "You won't," Ava said. It came out steady. Insurance, EIN, a bank account with a balance small enough to be beautiful. For 501c3, Ava called a lawyer who knew about starting small and good. They filed as a nonprofit in formation with a fiscal sponsor, so donations counted while the IRS took its time. They named it Code Haven in a group text where the 3 of them agreed in under 5 minutes, like the name had been waiting. At the hardware store, a clerk with a face that said he'd seen every kind of project rang up exit signs and child-height stools. He slid a strip of stickers across the counter. On the house, he said, "For kids who like putting their names on things." Day 24, a Tuesday. Daniel mounted a whiteboard near the entrance at a height where small hands could reach. Above it, he screwed a narrow shelf to hold markers. Above that, Ava leveled a strip of wood and centered a simple sign they'd printed at a neighborhood shop, "All Voices Matter." She didn't say the words yet. She let the wall hold them. Emily drafted a flyer with Ms. Lacey's help at school. No clip art, just one beautiful sentence in block letters. "Free community coding and creativity make something that is yours." She drew a tiny broom in the corner and labeled it "Start Here" for herself. Neighbors came the way neighbors do, 1, then 2, then a trickle that meant yes. A retired librarian brought a box of withdrawn paperbacks and the wisdom of a woman who knows how to make a room quiet without a shush. A deli owner from the next block donated a tray of sandwiches and said, "Teach one of them to fix my online menu," and we're square. A teenager named Malachi hovered at the door until Emily waved like he'd been expected for weeks. Day 27. Soft opening. No ribbon to cut. Just a door that swung wide and the smell of new paint settling into the bones. Daniel taped the emergency route diagram by the entrance, posted the occupancy limit where anyone could see, and tested the exit lights twice because once felt like tempting fate. Ava arranged 10 laptops on folding tables. Donations called from closets and offices newly imaged, all with the same wallpaper, a sunrise over nothing in particular. "Welcome to Code Haven," Daniel said to the 10 faces brave enough to try a thing. He kept the talk shorter than their attention spans. Rule 1. We keep each other safe. Rule 2. We keep the room honest. Rule 3. We make something that is ours. Emily bounced once on her heels and then smoothed herself into the role she'd been waiting to try. "I'm the first little teacher," she announced. "Today, I'm showing loops with Lego." She held up a bucket of bricks like a trophy. "A loop is just a circle that tells the truth." Ava laughed out loud and unafraid. It was a small sound, but it filled the room without asking permission. "I'll be at the help table," she said. "If your code gets shy, we'll coax it." A boy with sleeves too long raised a hand halfway and then all the way. "What if I don't know what to make?" Ava crouched so they were eye level. "Then we start with a box and teach it to say hello," she said. "Everything worth building starts smaller than you think." The two-adult rule worked the way good rules do, felt like a handrail, not a fence. Name stickers did their easy magic. The whiteboard filled Malachi built a maze. Rosa made a drum beat. Ava fixed a stubborn loop. Someone drew a tiny broom in the corner and wrote in Emily's block letters, "Start here again for luck." A teen from the next block sleeves, tattooed with stories he wasn't ready to tell, stayed late to tidy cables until they made sense. "Paper beats script," Daniel said, labeling bins with a Sharpie so the room could put itself away tomorrow. The teen grinned. "Labels beat panic," he amended. At closing, Ava stood by the door and thanked each kid for exactly one thing she'd noticed: a choice, a try, a retry. "You listened to your idea," she told one. "You were kind to your bug," she told another. "Kind to your bug." The phrase made Emily clap, once delighted. The last family left with a flyer and a promise to come back with cousins. The room exhaled. The sunset through the clear story washed the walls the color of the cord in Emily's drawing. Daniel swept not because the floor needed it, but because beginnings like ceremony. He paused at the corner where shoes had scuffed a crescent into the new paint and smiled. "Honest noise," he said. "Best kind." Ava wiped the fingerprints off the laptops with slow, grateful circles. "We did this," she said, then corrected herself the way she always did when the truth was bigger than her. "They did this. We made the room." Emily climbed a step stool and pinned her new mini poster beneath "All Voices Matter, Borrow My Brave." She added a small heart because some rooms deserve to be told out loud what they already know. They sat on the floor, CEO without a company janitor, without a building child with a job title she had awarded herself, and ate deli sandwiches like the kind of people who had finally remembered how to be hungry. "What's tomorrow?" Emily asked through a mouthful. "Install the handrail," Daniel said. "Fire extinguisher tag, first aid kit, volunteer orientation. And we call Ms. Lacey to thank her for sending half our class. And you," Ava said, turning to Emily. "You design the sticker that goes on the laptops when their code says hello." Emily nodded solemn. "It will be a son." Ava looked at Daniel then, and the look didn't ask a question and didn't rush an answer. It just held a truth both of them had been careful with. He held her gaze for the long beat it deserved, then glanced up at the sign above them, "All Voices Matter." He touched the words with 2 fingers like a promise you can say without sound. Outside, the city remembered who it was, horns and footsteps, and a siren that found somewhere else to be. Inside, Code Haven learned its first closing ritual. Daniel hung the broom on 2 nails by the door, bristles down, handle up a quiet totem. Ava switched off the exit lights, then back on, then off again, habit and faith in working order. Emily threaded her small hand into both of theirs. "Dad says miracles are just problems that met the right people in the right order," Emily said as they turned the lock. Ava squeezed back. Then, "Let's keep meeting them," she said. They stepped onto the sidewalk 3 shadows long on a brand new night and pulled the door of their first honest room closed behind them. Day 40 wore the kind of blue that feels like a fresh page. The warehouse smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and warm circuitry. Daniel tested the exit lights on, then signed the little green card on the fire extinguisher with the tidy print of a man who likes rules that keep people standing. Ava checked the QR sheet at the door and laid out Sharpies and name stickers like invitations. Say who you are. We'll meet you there. Emily taped a paper banner above the whiteboard with hands and glued determination. Silent code, strong voices level, Daniel asked. Level, Ava said, eyeing the line like a carpenter. Her voice was low, warmed by use. Emily gave the banner 2 ceremonial claps and hopped down from the step stool. The room gathered itself. Ms. Caldwell, electrician forearms like trust, tuned a row of donated laptops. Mr. Alvarez, landlord key ring like a wind chime carried in a water cooler. The retired librarian shelved a small row of paperbacks beside a sign that read, Quiet Corner Headphones and Fidgets in Ava's careful print. Aaron stood by the help table with a stack of sticky notes and a grin that said, We're ready to try. By 10, the trickle at the door had become a small stream. The deli owner dropped a tray of sandwiches with a note IOU, teach my nephew how to fix my online menu. A teenager with a skateboard tucked under his arm hovered, pretending the flyer had dragged him here against his will. A mother led in a boy with big eyes and a baseball cap pulled low. His hands flickered at his sides like birds. Ava greeted each person with the same 3 beats a look that held a smile that didn't ask a sentence short enough to carry. Welcome. I'm Ava. She used the whiteboard more than her voice. The boy in the cap paused at Quiet Corner as if it had invented itself just for him. Morning, Daniel said gently, kneeling so his eyes were level with the boy's. I'm Daniel. You can call me D if that's easier. He pointed to a small laminated card posted at the door, 2 adult rule. Sign in, out, emergency plan, by exit. The mother read it, breathed, and wrote Mateo on a name sticker. She didn't press him to wear it. Daniel handed her a pair of noise-canceling headphones with the care of a gift, not a fix. Ava crouched too, leaving conversation room. On the whiteboard she wrote, Take your time, Mateo. She drew a small box and typed with a marker print, Hello. Mateo watched the letters bloom. His shoulders eased a degree. At 10:05 a power strip popped with the impertinence of cheap plastic. Half the laptops blinked dark. A few kids startled toward panic. Hold, Daniel said, voice as even as a level. He flipped the breaker he'd labeled yesterday for this exact trick, redistributed the load, and made a quick note to buy a heavier strip. Honest noise, he said lightly, the room's way of clearing its throat. Laughter shivered the fear out of the air. Ava stepped to the front. No microphone, no stage. A woman in a dark sweater who had learned to make words count and silence do its good work. Good morning, she said. You could feel the room lean in, not to volume, to presence. 3 rules. We keep each other safe. We keep the room honest. We make something that is ours. She let a beat land. Today, she continued, you'll teach a box to say hello. Later, maybe you'll teach it to listen. Voices come in many shapes. You get to pick yours. It wasn't a long speech. It didn't need to be. Heads nodded, pencils lifted, shoulders loosened the way they do when someone trustworthy takes the wheel. Stations hummed to life. Emily's Lego table demonstrated loops a circle that tells the truth to a cluster of 8-year-olds who believed her on sight. Aaron ran a beginner's Python lane where a blinking cursor transformed into a greeting with the push of a spacebar. The skateboard teen, now name-stickered KI, discovered that making a rectangle move across the screen felt like holding wind. Mateo watched from the edge, headphones, snug fingers worrying the sticker's backing. Ava slid a laptop across the table, facing him, no pressure. On the screen, a single line waited, print, Hello, Mateo. She didn't hit enter. She just left it there like a door at the top of a short set of stairs. He glanced at his mother. She nodded once. He reached one finger extended and tapped the enter key as if it might bite. The word bloomed on the screen. He startled and smiled. Small, but real. Maker's smile, Daniel murmured behind them to no one in particular. Best kind. Again, Ava asked Mateo not with her mouth so much as with her eyes. He tried print, Hello Mom. He tried print Hello Room. He tried print Hello Me, and then ducked his head as if a spotlight had found him. Ava turned the laptop, slightly angling it toward the quiet corner so the room wouldn't ask anything of him he hadn't offered. She wrote on the mini whiteboard by his elbow, "No rush. You decide." At noon, the deli sandwiches arrived precisely when hunger turned into distraction. The retired librarian announced a stretch break with the authority of a traffic light. Ms. Caldwell replaced a frayed cable that had been planning to quit. Mr. Alvarez fixed a door closer with a screwdriver he liked more than most people. Emily tugged Daniel's sleeve. "We need a bell for the showcase," she whispered. "We'll use a broom," he said, tipping the handle against the floor twice, softer than a bell. Just as true. At 12:30, they dimmed the overheads by a whisper, and the soft showcase began. No stage. Just a projector screen and a rule share if you want. Listen like it's a job. Kai sent a rectangle skittering. A girl named Rosa crafted a drumbeat that made a few feet tap without permission. People snapped instead of clapping in deference to the headphones at the quiet corner. It sounded like rain on good soil. Mateo stood at the edge, palms slick. He looked at his mother, then at the screen, then at the whiteboard where Ava had added a tiny drawing of a door opening. He walked forward 3 careful steps. "Take your time," Ava said. Out loud, quiet but sure. He set his laptop on the table. On the screen, print "Hello" had become something he had decided to risk. Print "My voice is here." He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at the enter key like it was a friend he hadn't called in a while. He pressed it. The words appeared on the projector, white on charcoal, simple as a breath. "My voice is here." No one moved. Then, like a tide withdrawing a soft sound, filled the room chairs, easing hands, finding each other the kind of yes you hear with your shoulders. Mateo's chest lifted. He tapped again. Print high. Someone near the back whispered, yes, like a prayer that didn't need a church. Emily, unable to stand it, whispered back, yes. Ava's hand found the table's edge. Daniel stared at the screen and knew he would never forget the font. "Do you want to say it out loud?" Ava asked Mateo. "Not a dare a door." He shook his head. Then he nodded once. He pulled the headphones to his neck and, almost inaudible, as if borrowing a word from a place where words are rare, said, "Hi." He wasn't the only one who cried. The retired librarian dabbed her eyes shamelessly. Kai looked at his shoes like they were complicated. Daniel, who had learned the power of not making a moment bigger than a person, only put one fist briefly against his heart. Ava didn't applaud. She touched the screen with 2 fingers, and then her chest a salute that meant, "I heard you." Mateo smiled like a dawn that had been living under cloud for a very long time. Next, Emily asked softly, "Broom handle," tipping twice on the floor. Another kid stepped forward and the room went on a river that had found its bend. By 2, the showcase had become something else, not a performance, a conversation. A room full of small programs said hello in 4 languages. A grandmother asked whether she could make the computer print a recipe card for her gumbo. Aaron said, "Yes, ma'am," like a promise. The teen with the skateboard stayed to coil cords because he had discovered that order calmed his head. When the last laptop closed, the sunlight came through the clear story at an angle that made the dust look like glitter. The crowd spilled out in grateful knots, leaving behind the hum of a room that had done a good day's work. Daniel found Ava near the whiteboard, wiping it down with slow, steady strokes. A light film of dry erase ink dusted her fingers. She looked not tired. Spent in the way you want to be when you've carried something across a finish line and set it down where it belongs. "You didn't need many words," he said. "You wrote into them anyway." She kept wiping a smile working its way to the surface like a note from a shy instrument. "People hear sentences," she said, "but they remember gestures." He nodded toward the screen still faintly glowing from Mateo's last line. "You gave him a door. He did the walking." Ava set the cloth down. "We made the hallway," she said. "Together." He caught it the we and stored it with the other small brave things she'd risked in the last weeks. Up close, he could see a single hair clip that had loosened during the day. It caught a strand the way fear catches breath. "May I?" he asked. She didn't pretend not to understand. She tipped her head. He freed the hair, not a caress, a kindness. The clip sat warm in his palm. He set it on the table as if it were a fragile instrument. "I have a confession," she said, and the words were not drama, just truth stepping out. He waited. "I'm good at safe rooms," she said. "I'm new at safe people." He let the quiet hold it. "We can move at the speed of honest," he said. "No faster, no slower." Her eyes lifted to his. "Is this?" That she asked, not coy, not afraid, naming a line without drawing it. "It could be," he said, "if we keep the floor honest, if we let the story tell us where it wants to go." She exhaled. Not relief. Agreement. "Okay," she said, "then we go slow. We listen. We don't step on each other's code." He almost laughed. "Deal." Emily barreled in from the hallway, cheeks bright. "Dad, Miss Sterling Mateo's mom said he wants to come back Thursday and show us a list. Can we do lists?" "We can do lists," Daniel said. "We can do anything that starts small," Ava added, and then, like a ribbon cut with a whisper, said his name for the first time where it had room to echo. "Thank you, Daniel." He felt it like a chord found by accident and then on purpose. Anytime he said soft and true, they finished the reset together labels, aligned chairs, stacked cables, coiled into calm. Ava pinned a new card beneath All Voices Matter in Emily's fearless block letters. "Today, we heard hi." That's a sentence. She added in her own neat hand, "and a beginning." Daniel hung the broom on its nails by the door, bristles down. He touched the handle once the way a ball player touches a sign in the tunnel. "We're not neat," he said, smiling. "We're honest." Ava's smile matched his. Honest travels farther. Outside, late light laid gold on the sidewalk. Inside, the room dimmed to the hush of a place that had kept its promises. Emily wedged herself between them and took both hands. "Tomorrow," she announced, "I'm teaching if statements with cookies. If you're kind, then cookie." "Finally, a language everyone speaks," Daniel said. Ava squeezed Emily's hand, then Daniel's, then let both go in the order that told the truth about where they stood. "See you in the morning," she said, and this time when she turned off the exit lights, she didn't turn them back on to check. Some rooms you trust even in the dark. They stepped into the evening. Behind them, on the projector's cooling screen, 2 words lingered faint as breath my voice. It was enough. Tomorrow would add the is here. Day 41 woke soft and gold like the city wanted to whisper instead of shout. Code Haven smelled of soap pencil shavings and the faintest note of hot dust from laptops that had worked hard and slept well. Daniel arrived first. He clicked the exit lights on, then checked the handrail bolts with a quarter turn and the quiet satisfaction of a man who believes in gravity and screws. Ava followed with a canvas tote full of labels and a legal pad of clean lines. She set out name stickers, straightened a stack of beginner worksheets, and wrote the day's small promise on the whiteboard. We start small. We keep each other safe. We make something that is ours. Level, Daniel asked from the ladder sighting along the All Voices Matter sign. Level, she said, and the word carried farther than its size. Emily burst through the door a beat later, cheeks bright a long cardboard box hugged to her chest with ceremony and struggle. "Don't peek," she said, grinning at Daniel as he instinctively reached to help. "It's for Miss Sterling. I mean for Ava. I mean, it's for Code Haven, but also for you," she told Ava in one breath. "Is that okay?" "Borrowed brave travels," Ava said gently. "Yes." "Not yet," Emily said, fierce with delight. "After snack?" And after the inspector. The inspector Daniel raised an eyebrow. Ava nodded. Re-inspection on the panic bar and occupancy posting. He said he liked our paperwork, which is the closest thing to a compliment inspectors give. She smiled. "We'll pass." They did. At 10:15 a.m., the same city inspector from day 21 walked the space with his flashlight and a pen that looked like it knew stories. He tugged the panic bar. He checked the extinguisher tag Daniel had initialed with steady block letters. He glanced up at the clear-story windows where the light behaved. He signed the form with a flourish that almost certainly meant, "Okay." "Keep the aisles clear when you're full," he said, tapping the floor with the toe of his boot. Stools tucked in, kids supervised. "You're good." "Thank you," Ava said. "It came out clean." "Keep doing." "Whatever it is," he added, gesturing vaguely toward the whiteboard, the laptops, the banner that declared silent, code-strong voices. "My niece said hello to a computer here last week. Tell her Uncle Joe says the room is safe." "We will," Daniel said, line by line. The day found its rhythm. A second-grade teacher from the school 3 blocks over dropped off a box of crayons and took a stack of flyers. Mr. Alvarez tightened a hinge that had started clicking out of habit. Miss Caldwell stopped by with a bundle of cable ties and a joke about electrons preferring tidy lives. Erin labeled bins with her precise print until the shelves read like a user manual for kindness. By 11, Code Haven felt like it was humming at the exact pitch it was built for. That's when Emily tapped the cardboard box with 2 fingers, her new ritual for now, and announced presentation. Ava blinked. She wiped her hands on a cloth out of instinct the way people do before they touch something that matters. Daniel lifted the box onto the table and stepped back, giving Emily the full stage of a rectangle of sunlight. Emily slit the tape with a butter knife she'd wrapped in painter's tape like a child proofing the world herself. She pulled back the flaps and reached in with reverence. What she drew out did not glitter. It glowed the way worked wood glows when someone has believed in it. A broom. Not the old push broom Daniel had used to teach the floor honesty. This one had been sanded and painted a deep midnight blue. Across the handle, in small constellations of white paint, a child's careful hand had dotted stars. Near the grip, someone Emily obviously had wrapped a strip of soft brown leather and knotted it so the tail fell like a ribbon. Down by the bristles, a tiny brass plate caught the light. Emily had asked Miss Lacey's husband to engrave it at his shop on Atlantic Ave. The letters were tidy, simple, unafraid, "Start here." You didn't just clean floors, you cleared the path. Ava put her hand to her mouth. The world narrowed to the length of wood between grip and bristle and widened to a lifetime at the same time. "For you," Emily said, suddenly shy and suddenly brave all in one breath. "Because you helped my dad use his broom like a pencil. You helped him draw again." Daniel's fingers tightened around the back of a chair. He didn't try to swallow the ache. He let it sit where it belonged. "Kiddo," he said. His voice went nowhere for a second and then found itself. "This is a working tool." Emily nodded, missionary earnest. "I know. That's why it's special. It's not a wand. It's a thing you hold when you do the work." Ava reached for the handle, then pulled back. "I don't want to smudge. The stars. They're sealed," Emily declared. "Ms. Caldwell brought me the spray. 2 coats. Very professional." Everyone laughed the kind of laugh that makes a room bigger. Ava touched the brass plate with one fingertip. She said 2 words that sounded like a life arriving. "Thank you." Emily bounced once. "There's more." She pointed to the back side of the handle where a line of text in a finer hand Ava recognized Daniel's had been inked with a permanent marker that did not plan to fade. Paper beats script. Stories beat shortcuts. Ava's eyes lifted to his. He shrugged, embarrassed and sure at once. "Seemed right," he said. "It is," she answered, voice low and certain. "This is not decoration. This is direction." Mr. Alvarez produced a cordless drill from nowhere like a magician pulling a coin. "Where does it live?" he asked. Ava looked at the wall by the door, the place where the All Voices Matter sign hung at eye level, and Emily's mini poster beneath it declared, "Borrow my brave." She measured with her eyes, then with the width of her hand. Here she said, "At the entrance. High enough to be seen, low enough to belong." Daniel anchored 2 small brass hooks into studs hidden beneath paint, the drill singing a practical hymn. He hung the broom, carefully bristles down, handle up the brass plate, centered as if it were a small promise you could read on your way in and on your way out. The room went quiet the way rooms do when something takes its right place. Ava stepped back and read the plate, then the sign above it, then the child's heart below. She lifted 2 fingers to her lips and touched the wood the way she touched the glass by Emily's drawing the day she found her voice again. A room remembers the first kindness hung on its wall, she said, almost to herself. Erin sniffled. We should write what it is, she said, practical, even with a tremor, like a plaque without sounding like a plaque. Ava took a blank index card, the kind they used for name tags and quick projects, and wrote, "The broom, not a wand. A working tool. It clears a path so voices can walk. Start here." She taped it beneath the brass plate, straight and true. People trickled in all afternoon and stopped in the doorway without being told to the way animals pause at water. A grandmother traced the stars with air. A teenager read the engraving under his breath and squared his shoulders like he'd been asked to do something important. The boy with the baseball cap, Mateo, stood very still, headphones around his neck, and nodded once in the solemn way of a person agreeing to a vow. Later, when the room was between waves, Ava and Daniel found themselves alone by the door, the broom glowing in the last slice of light. "I've been thinking," Ava said, "about bridges and cages." He waited. He had learned that waiting was how some sentences find their shape. "I built a cage I could live in," she said. "Then I pretended it was a bridge. You kept the floor honest until I could tell the difference." He didn't deflect the compliment or dress it as a joke. "We built a bridge," he said, sharing the verb because it was the truth. She looked at the broom, and then at him. "I'm new at safe people," she said, repeating the confession from yesterday but setting it on a new shelf. "We can move at the speed of honest," he said again, because some promises are right enough to say twice in 2 days. A small silence settled. It felt like a bench, not a cliff. "Tomorrow," Ava said, eyes skimming the room as if taking attendance of the day after today, "we invite the neighborhood to a bigger showcase. I'll speak to the room." She smiled. The smile touched her voice. "Not a sermon. A thank you. And a door." "Then tonight we check the mics we don't have," Daniel said, smiling back. "And we practice walking through." Emily reappeared as children do, with perfect timing and no sense of stage directions. "Ms. Ava." She stopped herself mid-dash as if she'd hit a gentle shh sign and dropped into a reverent whisper. "Do you like it?" Ava crouched to the exact height of the question. "I love it," she said. "It's the most honest thing we own." Emily looked at Daniel for the shared glow of being seen. "Dad says honest travels farther," she reported. "He's right," Ava said and turned back to him. "You're right." "Don't let that get around," he said lightly. "It'll ruin my mysterious janitor reputation." Emily frowned in concentration, then brightened. "I'm making a sticker for tomorrow," she announced. "If your code says hello, you get a star. If your code listens, you get 2 stars. If your code is kind," she searched for the word you get to put your sticker on the broom. Daniel looked at the brass plate, at the leather grip, at the constellation of white paint stars. "We're going to need a bigger handle," he said. "We're going to need more rooms," Ava countered, half joking, half not. "Start here." Emily read, tapping the plate with one finger. "Then we'll know where to go next." As sunset pooled low and warm, neighbors filtered in after work to peek to promise to carry folding chairs as if they were heavy with reasons to stay. Miss Torres from the realty office came with a donut box and a story about a cousin who wanted to volunteer Saturdays. The deli owner taped a handwritten sign on the fridge. "Soda is for after projects. Bribes are for other people." The retired librarian set out a sign-up sheet for Thursday's story hour for coders and wrote her name first because leadership is mostly showing. When the last visitor left, they reset the room with the small care of people who intend to find it better in the morning. Erin switched the exit lights off, then on, then off again because she was learning. Daniel slid the bolt on the rear door with a click that felt like good punctuation. Ava stood a long minute with the broom. "Some gifts are not meant to be used up," she said. Daniel shook his head. "This one is meant to be used into," he said. "Like a pencil." He glanced at Emily. "Like you said." Emily nodded, satisfied she had been quoted correctly. They stepped into the evening the way you step onto a porch between inside and out, between work and what comes after. The street carried voices and footsteps and a saxophone from somewhere that wanted you to find it. Ava looked back one last time. The broom caught a sliver of last light and held it steady as a North Star. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," Daniel echoed. Emily squeezed both their hands with the authority of a small person who knows more than she can explain. "If we're kind, then cookie," she decreed. Finally, Daniel said a language everyone speaks. They locked the door. The room behind them kept breathing a safe animal at rest. And above the threshold, a sentence waited for the morning crowd like a benediction and a dare. "Start here." Day 42 dawned clear, the kind of morning that made sidewalks shine like promises. Code Haven had never been so full. Folding chairs borrowed from 3 churches, a barber shop, and a bakery lined the warehouse floor. The air buzzed with the scent of donuts, fresh coffee, and the anticipation of people who wanted to belong to something. Daniel checked the fire exits one last time. His shirt sleeves were rolled, his hair combed in the way Emily had insisted. Ava stood near the whiteboard, palms pressed together as if memorizing courage. And Emily, in a dress sprinkled with little stars, darted between rows with a clipboard bigger than her chest. She was the official greeter, solemnly assigning stickers and pointing out the broom on the wall like it was a national monument. By 10 sharp, the hum became a hush. The silent code. Strong Voices' banner swayed once and settled. Ava stepped forward, a woman who had built a cage of silence and now carried the key in her hand. She stood in the center of the room, without microphone, without podium, only her breath and her choice. She looked out at the crowd faces from every corner of the neighborhood, young coders clutching laptops, parents, teachers, the skeptical and the hopeful. Daniel caught her eye from the side. He gave the smallest nod. Emily mouthed the words she'd practiced with her "You can." Ava lifted the handheld whiteboard she had carried since the beginning. On it, she had written 2 words. "Thank you." She held it up first. The room exhaled as one. Then she set it down. Her lips parted. Her voice, careful but strong, filled the quiet. "I thought silence was my armor," she began. Every syllable landed like a truth unwrapped. But it was only my wound. I built walls so no one could hear me shake. I forgot that people can hold what feels heavy. And still, somehow, you listened anyway. The room stilled, 1,000 little hearts leaning forward. She went on, her voice steadier. This broom, she gestured toward the wall, used to be just a tool to sweep the floor. But here it became something else. It became proof that even what is ordinary can clear a path for extraordinary voices. Today, you've seen it. Children who thought their voices were too small. Neighbors who thought they had nothing to give. People who thought silence was safer than risk. All of us starting here. Daniel watched, chest tight. He'd imagined this moment, but never dared hope it would be this whole. Ava's eyes softened as they met Emily's. A little girl once handed me a drawing that said, "People who don't talk still have the biggest things to say." She was right, and she gave me back my voice. Emily pressed both fists against her chest, beaming through tears. Then Ava turned slowly, deliberately to where Daniel stood. And a man who once thought his life was broken reminded me that broken things can build bridges. He swept a floor. He fixed a code. But most of all, he taught me honesty travels farther than fear. The crowd shifted, some reaching for tissues, others simply holding still. Daniel swallowed, unable to look away. Ava faced the room again. So today isn't about computers. It isn't about code. It's about choosing to be heard, choosing to listen, choosing to build something together. She paused, the hush of the room holding her steady. Let's build something. Together. For a heartbeat silence. Then the hall erupted applause that shook dust from rafters, cheers, stomps, hands clapping like a storm that wanted to bless instead of break. Emily rushed forward, hugging Ava's legs, then Daniel's. "You did it," she squeaked. You both did it. Ava crouched to Emily's height, tears spilling freely. No, she whispered. We did it. Daniel stepped closer, hand brushing Ava's shoulder in the quietest claim. You spoke, he said, voice thick. The world needed to hear it. She looked up at him through the noise, her eyes shining. I needed to hear it too. The crowd continued, but around the three of them a stillness bloomed. Daniel, Ava, Emily, the small family built from silence and swept floors now standing in the sunlight of their own making. Later, when the hall had emptied and chairs were stacked, the broom still hung by the door. Its brass plate caught the last golden light of day. Start here. Daniel locked the back door. Ava turned off the exit lights. Emily slipped her hands into theirs as they stepped outside. The evening air was cool, carrying laughter from down the block. Ava stopped, looked back at the sign above the door. All voices matter, and at the broom beneath it. Then she turned to Daniel and Emily, her voice steady, certain free. Let's build something together. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They rang clear enough to last. And in that moment, under the wide sky, three people walked forward, not broken, not silent, but whole. And that is where our story comes to a close. A story of silence turned into courage of ordinary hands, creating extraordinary change, and of voices big and small finding their place in the world. Now, I want to hear from you. Where are you listening from tonight? Drop your city, your state, or your country down in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel, and how they connect us all. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of the strength inside yourself, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next chapter. And, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for spending your precious time here with me, for listening, and for carrying these stories forward. Until the next one. Stay kind, stay hopeful, and remember, every voice matters.